Hey Facebook, this is Charlie with Organic Robots Designs. We're excited. We're about ready to ready to go on our space discovery night. So we got with us here. We're here at Main Street, West Main Street, 113 West Main Street. You got plenty of time to get down here. We're going to go. We got two people talking briefly tonight. James DuMond, who is a game designer, designed this cool game, One Small Step. Had a Kickstarter campaign he produced with Academy Games, sent all over the world in September. He's going to talk about his game development and Kickstarter and a little bit how he got the game going. And it's based on the Russian and U.S. race to the moon in the 60s. So it's pretty cool. He's a history buff. James is going to tell us a little bit about that history as well. And then after that, Dan Vetters is going to speak for a couple minutes about, he's an employee, he's an actual rocket scientist. He's an engineer for Blue Origin out in Seattle, which is a Jeff Bezos company. That's a commercial company, space program. A lot of stuff you're hearing in space now is commercialized with working with NASA. He's going to talk a little bit about that, how things have changed since the 60s in the space program, and how the goals have changed, and maybe some of the players that are in it now, and maybe even what you can expect to see in the next couple of years. So, let's go ahead and get started. James is a friend of mine. Went to art school together, and come on up. So he's going to talk about One Small Step.
Thank you, Charlie. Well, I want to start with talking about the design process of how this started from just an idea in my head until we get to the finished product here. I've been in space my whole life. I mean, one of my earliest childhood memories is watching the Apollo Soyuz splash down in the Pacific Ocean. And it was so vivid to me because we had just gotten a color TV. And seeing that vivid blue water in the ocean on that splashdown was really striking to me. So I've been, and I'm a board gamer as a hobbyist. I like playing games of all sorts, war games, family games, and also party games and strategy games. And there just really wasn't any games on the market that combined my interest in space exploration and board games as a hobby. I mean, there were games that had space exploration as a theme, but they were all either too clunky and overly complex, or they went the other way and just made it too abstract that it just lost the theme. So this idea was kind of nagging in my head. The 30th anniversary came, and that'd be in 2009. I didn't do anything. And then the idea just kind of kept, eating at the back of my brain until finally it demanded I do something with it, right? And I think Charlie can attest to this. That's sometimes how the creative process works. You get an idea, and sometimes it nags at you until you decide, I've got to do something with it. And so I started putting stuff together. And my first iteration, the first version of it, it was garbage, I'll admit it. But there was enough there to tell me that it was worth building on. So you keep at it and keep at it. Over the course of, did I go to Gen Con and the Origins Game Fair? Those are two of the biggest game conventions in the country. Gen Con's in downtown Indianapolis. And at Gen Con, I met a guy named Brian Mayer, who had designed a game called Freedom the Underground Railroad for Academy Games. And I talked to him and he asked him, how did you make this? I mean, what was your process? Because I wanted to learn from somebody that actually went through the process to kind of give me, to learn the road. You know, what path do I need to take to get to my destination? And so he told me there are these game design conventions. The two biggest ones I would say, the only two I know of, are Protospiel and Unpub. Unpub is unpublished. So I went to Protospiel Milwaukee. That was the first of these design conventions I went to. And there I met industry insiders that kind of showed me and that what I was doing wrong and ways to improve the game to make it better. Well, fast forward a little bit, and the debate, I feel like the game's about ready to start pitching to publishers. I already knew at that point that self-publishing is more work than I wanted to do myself. So I started pitching it to AEG, Academy Games, and Jolly Roger are the three I can think of off the top of my head. But Academy Games was at the top of my list because their games specialize in history. And I wanted to make a game that was rich in space history to give it an education value. Because I feel like I felt that this theme was underserved in the board game marketplace. Because, as I said before, the games that have this theme are either too wonky or they're just too thin. And I thought Academy would be a great company to work with. And I was so thrilled when Uwe Eichert, who's Academy's president, called me up and said, we'd like to set up a pitch meeting. I had a pitch meeting at the Origins Game Fair in Columbus in 2018. And they signed me that fall. And even after getting the game signed with the publisher, it is still, you're only halfway there. There's still a lot more work to do because their development team takes my ideas and plays with it, and there's a little bit of back and forth between us until we finally get a finished product. And it took, I want to say, close to 18 months of development and working with the artists and graphic designers to make this thing, to make it ready to sell to the public. So I'm really thrilled about this. So let me talk about the game and how it's played. One Small Step is a worker placement game. And this is a game that takes two kinds of workers. You have administrators and engineers. So it plays with 2 to 4 players. As a 4-player game, your engineering department has to cooperate with the administration department to beat the other side. And what makes you cooperate is there's two action areas on the board that your workers do stuff. So in a worker placement game, it's kind of intimidating to people because if you're used to the traditional family games like Clue or Monopoly, for example, it's completely different from that. But it's a really simple rule mechanism where you put your worker on your space and you do the thing. What makes it complex is the decisions that you have to make. is that the right play for me at that time? But, and here's the twist of that. When you put your worker on a space, you're now blocking it from everybody else. So if my opponent takes that space before me, there's that tension that you gotta have to get in there. So I don't know if they'll be able to see this on the table or not, but I'll kind of hold it up. So this is the game board. So there's two areas that your workers can go. The earth, and there are these development cards that goes at the bottom. There's these green cards. Okay? These represents people, technologies, and other aspects that were part of that space race. For example, the PR tour. Astronauts and the cosmonauts on the Russian side too, they were all trying to gather support for their space program with their local politicians and the public. Documentary films, booster testing, these are scientific things that the actual people did to learn how to fly in space. But these development cards have two sections. There's a worker action space on them. And there's a picture on it that tells you what kind of worker that card will accept. The Earth has 5 spaces that are split with engineer and administrative spaces on each one, but when an engineer is placed there, it blocks that space from an administrator, right? So you could potentially get in the way of your teammate. If I put my administrator on a space and my engineer's like, my engineering partner's like, I need to go there.
Cause some fights.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where the cooperation comes in. Now, I personally think that's one of the richest part of the game. I know a lot of people don't like it, and that's fine. This is still an excellent 2-player game if you want to play it that way. So the object of the game, obviously, is to advance on the moon path. You do that by flying manned missions. But to gather resources for the manned missions, to make that easier on you, you can fly satellite missions, sending robots into space and exploring stuff. When you learn things, they'll help you on your manned missions to get to the moon. These development cards also give you things that can help both your satellite and your manned mission program. And so there's a lot of stuff that fits together. I know the game can be a little complicated at first when you look into it, but once you learn the game and play a turn, things ought to click because it makes sense. But landing on the moon, although it gives you a big bonus at the end, whoever gets there first isn't necessarily the winner of the game, because that'll be the last turn, and at the end, it's the most points who wins. Now, the reason that is, let's face it, from 1957 to 1972, science and technology has advanced a lot because of the space race. So, your opponent, who didn't make it all the way to the moon, may have done a lot more scientific research to get points in that area. So the winner is not necessarily the person that has landed on the moon, but has also advanced humanity's knowledge in science and technology the most. And that is one small step.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because the cards that you have in it are actual astronauts.
Yeah.
You know, with American and Soviet astronauts, and there's actual people.
Yeah.
And the satellites are the actual satellites that were set up that you send up before you as you're getting your building your technologies.
Right. And to give the game educational value, there's what we call in the board game hobbyist world, flavor text at the bottom of the card. This text at the bottom has no impact on the gameplay, but it's there to teach you something about that given thing. So for example, I have the astronaut John Glenn, and his flavor text is, John Glenn was the first American to orbit the Earth in Project Mercury's third manned flight aboard Friendship 7. So you're going to learn something about the people and things that went into the space race.
Does anybody have any questions for James?
Have you spoken to hitherto about putting that there?
To who?
They were going to be here tonight and they couldn't make it. Kevin couldn't make it. But he says he's going to be watching, and he said they are carrying James's game. They'll be carrying it in their store. When's the release, next week or the week after?
I think it'll be out in retail next Tuesday.
So you will be able to get this game, because this just came out in Kickstarter in September.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the general release to the public is in the next week or two, and Kevin said that they will be stocking that there. So
cool.
So it's and Academy has some cool games too. If you like historically based games too, they got some pretty cool stuff too. So
Yeah.
So any other questions for James? Okay, thanks, James.
Thank you very much,
Appreciate it.
Charlie.
Yep. All right. So now we have Dan Betters, which I'm sure was chuckling behind his mask when they were talking about engineers and administrators, because he deals with that every day on his job. And I'm sure he'll be politically correct enough not to say much about that, but I thought it was kind of funny. So Dan works for Blue Origin. In case you missed it before, he's going to come just talk a couple minutes about how the space program has changed since the 60s to present day, and how some of the goals have changed, how it's been, the commercialization has come into it, and kind of how they work now, and maybe even what they look for in the future. So Dan, come on up here.
Okay. Are you guys comfortable if I take the mask off this space? Okay. I think it'll be easier to hear me.
Just don't spit on us.
Yeah.
Put your
promise
problems
it,
on us.
Yeah, come on in. My name is Dan Betters, and I am an engineer. Don't hold it against me. I work for Blue Origin, but I grew up here in Indiana, and I went to school here in Indiana. Rose-Hulman. I worked in Indiana, Cummins, and then at Rolls-Royce in gas turbine engines for 29 years altogether. And then I finally, when I got to the point of looking for another job, I ended up at Blue Origin out in Seattle, and I'm in their fluid systems department, and I'm designing some of the fluid systems parts, which is mainly the valves and connections and everything needed to manage all the fuel and fluids in the rocket vehicle. So I'm responsible for designing, developing and delivering a whole valve component that will help make all those systems work and not blow up. Hopefully, yeah. That's what I do, and I'm loving it. I've never dreamed I'd be working in the space industry designing rocket parts, but it is really cool, and it is a lot of fun. And Blue Origin has been a really good place to work. To what James was saying, it is really amazing if you look back in history how much was done in the 50s and 60s in aerospace. And how far forward we moved as a country and as mankind in our knowledge of space and aerospace, and then just things kind of have over the years have kind of died. The civil aerospace airplanes is like one of the only industries where we've gone back in technology, because we used to have supersonic civil flight airplanes and stuff, and now we don't even have those anymore. And so it really has kind of stalled out and everything. But as everyone probably knows, anymore recently, it's getting exciting again, because the space industry is revitalizing and getting a lot of activity going on, and it's creating jobs for people like me to go out there, and there's just a lot going on, and it's really exciting for kids. The thought that growing up, only if you're really lucky and work really hard, maybe you could be one of the very few that could actually be an astronaut and get into space and everything. But yeah, it's getting to where kids that are being born now might have an actually decent shot at, if they want to, being involved some way, either as an engineer designing, or manufacturing, or maybe even going out and mining an asteroid or something. So it is really exciting, because that is what we're gearing up for. Recently, I was reading something somewhere, and they were talking about, historically, going back to history, looking at when there's a new region, like North America or the Western states. When there's a new region, what's it take to get people actually out there populating that new region? And it was going through kind of exploration versus commercialization, and everything always starts out with exploration. But if you think about it, exploration only goes so far, because you get only a few people out there exploring it, and then they come back and report, and they're kind of transient. They're going out there exploring, coming back. But it isn't until the commercialization starts happening, like people figure out there's money to be made out there, they go and they start mining, they start harvesting trees, they start establishing farms and whatnot, to send produce back and food back. It's things like that that actually get people out there, not only the workers, but their families. And when their families go, you need schooling, you need doctors, you need churches, you need all of that. And so that's, historically, that's when regions get settled and everything. And it's kind of exciting, because that's kind of right what we're on the cusp of with the space industry right now, is that it's going from government-led exploration and scientific studies to actual commercialization, and the possibility of actually getting people out there and living. Jeff Bezos, the owner of Blue Origin, owner of Amazon, all that kind of good stuff. But he put Blue Origin in place and gave them the vision of having millions of people living and working in space. And I don't know him, but I honestly believe it is something of a philanthropic endeavor for him, in that he believes humanity needs it. And in fact, you look at it, a lot of people do believe we are going to need to leave the Earth and tap into the resources and space, because if you look at how the population of the Earth is just keeping growing, and there's only finite resources, and if you take a sober look at it, it is kind of concerning. And so there is something to be said for that. So there is a need there. We're on the cusp of it, but there are a lot of hurdles, because it is darn expensive. That's the main number one thing is, okay, somebody wants to go to space and live and work out there. How do you get there? It is so expensive, and only a few people get to do it. So how do you break down those hurdles? Well, how you do it is you get commercialization going on. You get companies going out there to mine asteroids, or you get tourism out there. That's a starting point. You go harvest methane off of some of the gas plants or the moons or whatever, and bring it back for natural for resources here. And there will still be exploration and all. But But to do all that, you need an infrastructure to get people the ability to go out there. And once you build that infrastructure, people will be able to get out there. The entrepreneurs will jump on board and say, hey, I figured out that if I can get to Mars, I can harvest this and bring it back, or I can do this and bring it back, and I can benefit from it, but it also will benefit everybody. But to do that, you need the infrastructure. It's kind of interesting. What I've heard of Elon Musk and what he's looking for, he's definitely looking for commercialization. He's definitely needs and wants to make a profit ASAP, but he is also talking about wanting to go to Mars. You know, that kind of exploration point is exciting to him. I can't blame him there. But he is also, I noticed on their website, they're starting to sell tourism trips as well, as a way of raising money and funding all of this. If you look at Jeff Bezos, what he started Blue Origin to do largely is to build an infrastructure to get to space. So that's not do the sexy explorations to Mars and that kind of stuff, but we're going to build the semi-truck that's going to haul the stuff to space, so platforms can be built out there, the equipment can get out there, the people can get out there at a reasonable cost, and then the companies and entrepreneurs will get out there and they'll figure out, hey, I can actually get there, I can actually do this, hey, I'm going to go mine that rare earth metals out of that close by asteroid, and off they go. So that's kind of what's going on right now. So one of I won't talk that long here, but one of the key things to that is the cost. And if you look at how things are evolving right now, it's kind of interesting. The space shuttle was reusable, but it was still exceedingly expensive, and a lot of it was not reusable. But that's one of the key things right now. If you look at what SpaceX is doing, what Blue Origin's doing, their boosters come back autonomously and land so that they can be reused, and things are being designed for lots of missions. And from an engineering standpoint, that's exciting because that's challenging, because it's one thing if something has to live for one cycle and go up and then it's gone, but when you have to actually bring it back and shut it down and then start it up and go again, that's a lot bigger challenge. And it's people are figuring it out, and now both companies are bringing boosters back and landing them autonomously, which means also the engines, which that kind of heat and that kind of duty cycle and everything, to bring them down, bring them back, shut them down, and repeat it again and again is really impressive. They're reusing the fairings that cover the loads at the tip of the rocket. SpaceX is recovering those, and the capsules are coming back and landing and being reused. So there's just a lot of exciting stuff there going on, and the designs are changing as a result. Another thing they're doing is the fuels that they're choosing for the rockets. They're choosing from the get-go to put fuels in that may actually be available in space. Hydrogen and oxygen. If you've got an ice cap on Mars, you can take the ice, break it apart into hydrogen and oxygen, and actually fuel your rocket. Methane, natural gas, because some of the gas giants and gas planets and stuff, you can maybe harvest that out there, and actually it might be available in space for you. So that's some of the changes, and they're working on the building the workhorses. The SpaceX Falcon 9 looks like it's going to be able to haul out a massive amount of weight. Blue Origin, the rocket we're working on, is going to have a huge payload volume, so bigger things can get out there, and they're working on that infrastructure. And then the last thing, to get millions of people living and working out there that's going to be needed is the habitats. How do, people are living there, you have to live there. But a lot has been learned from the space station, I believe, and I have a feeling that's going to be someplace that gets a lot more activity as you mentioned the Artemis program, getting back to the moon before too long. There probably are going to, I can envision that they're going to have people staying there for a while, like on the space station. Instead, they'll go to the lunar station, and that'll be a first step to consider other places as well. So that's another place to keep an eye on. But that's pretty much it.
Anybody have any questions?
What's Blue Origin's involvement with the Artemis program?
So they won a study contract along with other companies for the lunar lander. So what that is they'd be designing and delivering a module that would go from an orbit location and go from there and go land on the moon. So it wouldn't lift off from Earth or whatever, but another rocket would take them up to this transfer station, if you will, and then the lunar lander would go from there down to the moon and get them back. And Blue Origin is part of they call it a national team with some very heavy-duty, long-term space companies, but Blue Origin is the prime contractor on that, which is a big deal. Also, if you look at the money that was doled out, the biggest chunk of the study money came to Blue Origin for that, and the national team for that. So they're pretty excited, but we're pretty excited about that and think that got a good shot at that. But that's hopefully we'll be working on that. That is exciting, the concept.
Yeah.
When I go outside and I look up at the moon now, it just
Seems closer, doesn't it?
oh yeah, it's just like, man. Well, first of all, people have been there before, and we're going back. Before it was kind of like, yeah, somebody went there decades ago, and everything. But now it's like we're going back, and what do they say now? We're going back to stay this time, or something like that. And that
like a buoy trailer.
yeah, it does. But that is
back to stay.
right now with everything going on. That is the trajectory we're on, and it is exciting. So
What about it seems like I don't get the co-op, like when the Dragon rocket went up there to the space station or whatever it was. That's a cool name for a rocket. I like Dragon. That's a cool name. But they got there and NASA was involved and there were people on the station from other countries, or how's NASA fit in this, and how do the other countries? It seems almost. Is there a co-op to a certain degree, or how are they? Do they have commercialized programs as well, or?
I don't know definitively. I do know that part of the way we're going to get to space is by bringing costs down, and SpaceX has decimated the cost of launching a rocket into space with their reusable components, and just by working more efficiently. They brought their rockets, that they're using now to market at a fraction of the cost and time that it would have taken NASA to, and it's just kind of a life cycle that I think corporations go through. They get really big and they get old, and they have trouble moving quickly and efficiently, and I think unfortunately that's probably a little bit there, but by getting it out to, hey, this isn't taxpayers' money coming, this is a business, and we've got to be efficient at this. I think that's helped. It's breathed some new blood in. So, but NASA's excited about it too, because it gets them a cheap vehicle to get up and do the things they want to do too, and stuff. So it really is a good partnership, because NASA still does have a lot of good expertise and to bring to bear and stuff, and they are an integral part of it all. But they're just not the ones, you know, actually designing and developing the rockets themselves now. And in terms of other companies, other countries and stuff, I don't really know. I'm not aware of other countries at the same level as like SpaceX and Blue Origin. But I do know, I think I heard sometime that the European Space Agency is kind of upset because SpaceX's costs are so low that it just nobody's coming to them, and it makes no sense for them to be doing what they're doing, you know. And I did notice too, ULA, which is a traditional rocket manufacturer that worked in conjunction with NASA and stuff. They're coming out with the Vulcan rocket and Centaur, and one of the big things they're marketing that for is lower cost, and I'm sure that's partly because of pressure from SpaceX and Blue Origin and such. So there is a lot of, you know, you get one, you know, game-changing moment and faction going on, and all of a sudden everything starts moving. So.
Centaur, that's another cool name. I want the job to make rockets. I think I could do it.
New Shepard and New Glenn, you guys got to do something better than that.
Yeah.
I know who they are, but
Yeah.
she won't.
Yeah. I kind of agree. I love the nod to history. I love history and those folks, and I love that nod. But yeah, it's not
Sexy.
exciting. Yeah. So.
Anybody else have any other questions for Dan? Okay, thanks. Cool. Thanks a lot, guys. So, thanks for coming out. We do have some space shirts if you're interested. We can get the press going here and print up some shirts. They're $10 a piece. We've got some kid sizes, a few kid sizes too. We've got 2 designs. So, if you're interested, just come over here and Debbie will help you get picked out and we'll get going on it. So, thanks a lot for coming. I am planning on, now that I have a store here, I'm planning on doing a few things like this, maybe once or twice a month, different topics, just an hour, not very long, casual. On a lot of stuff I do, I print Indiana stuff. I'm big on where I live and outdoor recreation, fishing, hiking, biking, canoeing, kayaking, climbing, all that stuff. So, you know, maybe have somebody come and talk about mountain biking in Indiana, you know, for half an hour, 40 minutes or so, and print some stuff. I know that there's a guy over here, space on a name, Westerfield. He makes fishing lures. So he's going to come after Christmas sometime, probably in January or February, and he's going to talk about how he makes the lures. You know, why is this a crappie lure? You know, what did I do to make this so a crappie bites it? And kind of like that. And I'll have some fish shirts up on the press, and we'll be printing those out too. So thanks so much for coming, and come take a look at the shirts. And feel free to ask James and Dan some questions. And thanks for coming. Really appreciate it.